Welcome to this video that discusses implementing AI APIs with Spring Part 2. After watching this video, you will be able to identify how to set up the configuration, identify how to create a controller, identify how to test the implementation, and list the steps to depict the flow of the application. Let's take the case of an organization preparing to deploy an AI API. Before deployment, it needs to set up the application configuration, create a controller, and test the application. The configuration class being set up is simple, but an important step. Let's go over the main aspects. The @configuration annotation tells Spring that the class contains bean definitions. The @bean annotation on the REST template method tells Spring to call this method and manage the returned object. Creating a REST template as a bean allows Spring to inject it wherever needed, like in the ticket classification service. Next, add the API key and URL to the application.properties file. The hash API key for authenticating with OpenAI and the hash URL for OpenAI's chat completions endpoint are displayed on the screen. These properties files are loaded by Spring and injected into the service class through the @value annotations. Next, let's create a REST controller that will expose the service. The controller class handles web requests. The @REST controller annotation combines two annotations. @controller tells Spring the class handles web requests. @ResponseBuddy tells Spring to convert the returned objects to JSON. The @request mapping /API/tickets defines the base URL path for all methods in this controller. Inject the ticket classification service through the constructor. The classifyTicket method is mapped to handle post requests to /API/tickets/classify. Takes a support ticket object from the request body. Calls the service to classify the ticket. Updates the ticket with the category. Returns the updated ticket, which Spring will convert to JSON. Now test the implementation using tools such as Postman or curl. When you send a request to test the implementation, Spring converts the JSON to a support ticket object. The controller calls the service with the ticket content. The service sends the content to OpenAI's API. OpenAI analyzes the text and returns a category. The service extracts the category and returns it. The controller updates the ticket and returns it, and Spring converts the ticket back to JSON. The response to the request should include the ticket with an assigned category. Let's visualize the flow of the application. The client sends a POST request with ticket data. Spring Boot receives the request and routes it to the controller. The controller extracts the ticket data and calls the service. The service prepares and sends a request to OpenAI's API. OpenAI processes the text and returns a classification. The service extracts the classification and returns it to the controller. The controller updates the ticket and returns it to the client. Spring Boot converts the ticket to JSON and sends the response. In this video, you learned that before deploying an AI API, you need to set up the application configuration, create a controller, and test the application. The @configuration annotation tells Spring that the class contains bean definitions, and the @bean annotation on a method tells Spring to call the method and manage the returned object. The API key and URL are added to the application.properties file, which are then loaded by Spring and injected into the service class through the @value annotations. The controller class handles web requests. Testing the AI API implementation uses tools such as Postman or curl. The AI API application requests flow from the client to Spring Boot and the controller. The controller extracts the ticket data, calls the service, which then sends a request to OpenAI's API. The OpenAI processes the text and returns a classification through the service to the controller. The controller processes the ticket information and sends the response.